Silver Dave here. I haven't done a video like this for a while. I'm gonna give you guys a bit of an update of the stack, and let's find out, what's my philosophy on value. So let's find out. It's been a while since I showed you guys part of my stack. I was mainly working on sort of these computer algorithms to price gold and silver, and it got me a little bit thinking, So what have I been buying and adding to my stack physically? Because I'm still stacking gold and silver. Well, you saw in the few videos before, I was starting to gather some platinum. I haven't bought more platinum. I'm waiting for a slight correction before I add more platinum. And I've been mainly focused on adding gold to my stack. And there's a few reasons why I'm doing that. Partially because, I've been doing a lot of calculations and I'm seeing that gold tends to perform better in the long run relative to silver, even though silver has, I would say, a greater volatility from the lows to the highs. Silver can be more, can produce a better results, but it's relatively speculative. And I do have taxes on silver, so I'm focusing more on gold. I will add more silver. I do expect that silver should have maybe like a slight pullback sometime soon. And then we'll see further highs, maybe depending on demand or no demand. Or I'll just add some numismatic stuff that I like and I wanted to buy for a while. But mainly right now, I've been buying gold. And what have I been buying for gold? Well, I've been adding roughly around 7 gold sovereigns to my gold stack. As you know, previously I was mainly buying these Swiss franc coins. Let's see if I can get a focus here. It's hard to get a focus. These Swiss franc coins, which are in the $300 range, right? And they're pretty good. I like them. They hold their value quite well. They are quite liquid, and Swiss banks buy them. They are quite known at dealers. Dealers know what they are, and they do have them frequently in stock and frequently on sale. Now, another coin that I've been adding to my stack more recently are these gold sovereigns. This is a George gold sovereign. You can see that this is in 1912. I don't know if you can see on the camera. So it's over 100 years old. And these coins, I am starting to like these more than the Swiss Miss because they carry no premium. They have a slightly higher gold content. They have 22 carats, same as a gold eagle. And they are fractional amounts of gold. So they're not 1 ounce. They are definitely less than 1 ounce. They're 0.235 ounces of gold. There is 7.32 grams of gold per coin. And they have no premium. They are very well known. And also within the European Union and the United Kingdom, there's no tax on these. They're considered money. So they're very popular in continental Europe and in the United Kingdom. And that makes it, based upon my geographical location, very attractive to stack these. So how many of these have I been adding? I've been adding about 7 of these. So I've greatly expanded the amount of gold sovereigns I have. I've added, 7 gold sovereigns. I used to mainly have these Edward gold sovereigns, if you remember these. These were on sale too, but they're no longer on sale from my dealer. And because they're becoming collectible. They're becoming somewhat collectible, the Edward gold sovereigns. He's not making them, putting them on sale anymore. I think, sovereigns are quite funny. They tend to skip a generation in terms of collectability. Like these George sovereigns are not super collectible. The Queen Elizabeth sovereigns there are some numismatic ones that are quite collectible. There are bullion grade ones that sell for their gold content worth. And then in terms of collectible sovereigns, you have the Victoria sovereigns, and you have, I think, there was a short run of, I don't know which Edward it was, but there was a very short run, a 1-year run of an Edward sovereign that's very collectible. There's some Perth, Australia gold sovereigns that are quite collectible, and South African sovereigns that are quite collectible too. However, if the queen, who is really, really old, who's Elizabeth, dies, what you tend to see is that the older sovereigns, at least was the monarch preceding that, the current monarch that died, the collectability value of those coins tend to go up. So I'm right now seeing this, that I'm able to buy these at spot gold price as quite a deal. Like, yes, they are bullion grade, you know, they're bullion coins, but the fact that they are selling for spot right now, and they could gain, they have a lot of upside going for them. There's quite a bit of value play in there going for it, and somewhat of a numismatic play, a speculative numismatic play, but I'm buying them at spot. So it's pretty much, you know, I've got very little risk in that sense. What else do I have? I still have my silver stack. I did a summary of my silver stack. I have around 200 ounces of silver, a little bit less, like 180 ounces of silver. But the main thing I want to address, and I've been working on these computer algorithms to sort of price out the price of gold, is I want to talk a little bit about value, right? I know a lot of you who are watching silver stacking videos and gold stacking videos, you know that, you know, fiat currency has pretty much value only because governments are in power and they say it has value. So you have to use it. It's a value through enforcement of law. That's but if the enforcement or the governing agency loses credibility and people decide not to adopt it, then that item loses its value completely. It's just worth paper, right? We've seen it in different countries like Zimbabwe. We've seen it in Venezuela. We've seen it, we're seeing it somewhat now, is the massive injection of dollar into the US economy, and the fact that, you know, most economists are like, oh, we will never see inflation because we can inject so much and we can just print money directly into, into the economy. It won't have any negative consequences. That's like kind of a pipe dream. So a lot of you are like, yeah, we want commodity-backed money, which is essentially silver, gold, platinum, commodity-backed money. To a certain extent, oil could also be considered commodity-backed money. These are money, physical money, that have their value. When you pay somebody with this type of money, you're essentially giving them the money. You're not giving them a tender or an IOU or a debt obligation. You're giving them the money straight up. And these type of money, well, typically you cannot do things like quantitative easing on gold, platinum, or silver, right? They're mined, so they do have a supply increase, but that supply increase is pretty more or less fixed every single year. Gold is around maybe 1% to 1.2% a year. Platinum, somewhat less. Silver, it varies a little bit, but it doesn't, you cannot, from the day to the next, decide to increase the supply by 20% arbitrarily. By doing that, a lot of cases, for most currencies, when they do that, except for the dollar, we haven't seen it yet, but for most currencies, when they decide overnight to double their monetary supply, the government loses credibility. Like, the monetary governing, I would say more specifically, the central bank that does that loses all credibility with its constituents, and internationally, that currency is no longer accepted. But I really want to discuss today is, what is value, right? We know that paper money has value only because you have to use it, but gold and silver, yes, they have value because they're backed by commodity, but you really think about it, they don't really have value. They don't have value because we agree that this is a commodity. The underlying commodity, gold, the atom of gold and the atom of silver, has value, and we accept as a medium of exchange. That's why they have value. If you're in a desert, right, and you have nothing, and you don't have any food, and you don't have any access to water and so on, so you can see where I'm going at, does this stuff have value? No, it doesn't have value. If you're alone in the desert and you're dying of thirst, this does not have value. What has value? Water has value, right? If you're dying of thirst in the desert, a bottle of water will be infinitely more valuable than gold and silver. But what if, so does it mean that like today, like when I'm in this world where I live and in a functioning economy, in a functioning world where there is ample money, ample paper money, does water have more value? No, because it's abundant. It's everywhere, right? It's clean water is easily accessible. So how do we define value? Is it utility? Well, obviously it's not just utility. There's not just a component of utility in it. There is also, I believe, something called trust. This is the essential part of money. The essential part of money and value is that people have to be able to trust that the item that retains value and is the medium of exchange cannot be falsified, cannot be freely duplicated, right? And cannot be freely issued. And when they get it, they're sure that the quantity they're getting can be exchanged in, I would say, the medium to short term for more or less the same amount they spent to acquire it. You're like, okay, what does that mean? That means that if I give you a piece of gold, right? You know that a piece of gold cannot be duplicated. The atom of gold, you can't make it unless you have two neutron stars hitting each other. You know that it's like alchemists have been trying to falsify gold, but it's quite difficult to make fake gold, and there are methods to test whether a gold coin is real or not. Can you trade this for something else that is roughly of the same value you use to trade it with me? And throughout all of history, that has been true, right? You could more or less trade more for more goods or services, or roughly the same amount of goods or services, with the gold you received as payment. So by nature, this has a very useful property. It has utility. It has the utility of preserving your wealth. But it has a utility of preserving your wealth not because we decided to give it the utility to preserve its wealth. It has it because it has natural characteristics. The same with silver, the same with platinum. It has natural characteristics that give it this property. And the funny thing about gold, and this is why I've been stacking more gold relative to all of these other ones, gold is the only one that pretty much has only that property, right? The other ones, they have part of their value actually in it is valued into the industrial use. So if you were to treat it as a pure money, you have to give it a discount for silver and for platinum. You're like, yeah, but silver is real money. Yes, it is real money. It's a commodity-backed money. The thing with silver is that silver is less resistant to corrosion. So if you leave this in water over time, you would get like tarnish and so on. You're like, yeah, but most of it is still the same. Yes and no. You know, if it does lend itself to become corroded over time, and sulfur does attack it, it's only money. I would say it's only small denomination forms of money. It's not convenient in large form trade. Gold doesn't have that problem. What about platinum? Platinum has the same properties as gold. The only problem with platinum is it's easy to fake. You can take nickel and tin and mix it together. It's very hard to, visually at least, to find like, oh, this is gold. It's yellow. It has a unique color. The color of gold is almost unmistakable. Like when the first time you see gold, I don't know if I have a copper coin or something else here, but gold is one of the rare metals that is not whitish, it's yellow. That's what makes it so unique and easily identifiable. So you know that on first sight, it's gold. Then you take its density and weight, you're like, oh yeah, it's quite heavy. And then if you were to do a few tests on it, for example, a scratch test, a weight test, and a density test, you can easily find that it's very hard to imitate. Silver and platinum, it's easier to imitate. At least visually, it's harder to see whether it's gold or not from afar. And that's sort of their disadvantage. And finally, I really wanted to like just conclude this video is that, you know, whenever you're like stacking and when you're thinking about value, it's always at the back of your head, you have to think like, why am I doing this, right? For me, my reasoning is quite simple. Right now I see that there is uncontrolled sort of monetary policy. And pretty much it's a giant experiment. They're printing money. They don't know what will be the long-term effect. It's just like they don't know. It could be negative or it could be positive. But one thing is for sure is that asset prices are going to go up. And if you store your wealth in paper currency, you are going to see depreciation in what you're holding. And my plan, I don't really want that. So I'm like, okay, and what can I do? What can I add to my portfolio? Because this is not the only thing I add. What could I add to my portfolio to benefit a little bit from the situation? One of the things I did was I put myself into debt because I'm like, okay, if they're going to print money, then debt, it becomes no longer an issue. And then you fix your interest rate on your debt and you're like, okay, I'm set. I've got 10 years to like monetize whatever I took my debt on. That's great. Companies are doing this. Although companies are doing this with the intent that the CEO does share buybacks and then he monetizes his own personal profit rather than monetizing the company's ability to generate future profits. But in the short term for your personal wealth preservation, this is a good idea considering the current monetary situation. I personally, like after I've been stacking silver, a little bit of platinum and gold, I think that overall I do prefer gold because gold is the only one whose, I think, price is purely a monetary price. You're like, yeah, but other things can grow with like with demand and so on. Yes and no. Imagine this, right? Imagine silver. You're thinking like, oh, silver can go to $400 and every single EV uses silver. But what if they decide that like silver is too expensive to put into EVs, right? And the industrial use of silver is not so useful. And they're going to, you're like, yes, it's the best conductor, but you can use graphite and then you can use manufactured graphite and possibly with aluminum or aluminium to create superconductors or something that does the job of silver at 80%, you know, and that would be good enough for the price. That could happen. You know, I've been reading papers on solar cells is that now they're exploring alternative materials to coat solar cells because they're seeing that if they make mass quantities of solar green energy and the basic conductor behind the cells is silver, it's going to be so expensive. It's just not sustainable in terms of production. So, and cost, you know, imagine if every single solar cell was, I don't know, they use what, 20 grams of silver, and each gram, if the grammage of silver goes up to the price of gold because of demand, you would have a problem. You put your solar cell out I don't know, in your garden, and somebody will come and steal your solar cell because the metal in it is worth so much. So I don't think that eventually they'll do that. I think eventually they'll move on to a different metal if silver becomes too expensive. And you're like, that will never happen. It's the best conductor. Well, you know, platinum is pretty much the best catalyst out there, right? And there was a time when platinum was worth more than gold. You're like, really? Yeah, there was a time when it was double the price of gold. It was in the same position as palladium. And what happened was palladium was so cheap that people were like, oh, instead of platinum, let's use palladium. And look what happened to palladium. It went through the roof. Now they're like, oh no, palladium's so expensive. Let's move to platinum. Yeah, these things, like for industrial demand, it's inherently deflationary in the long term because businesses don't want high costs for their raw materials. If silver's property is conductivity, right? There's a lot of things that conduct electricity. I think silver will go up because there are special applications where it cannot be replaced, but most of its pricing is industrial, which means that by nature it's deflationary and it's not accepted as a form of payment between countries. The reason why I prefer gold, I think, for the monetary risk side, to hedge myself against monetary risk, or to protect myself against monetary risk, is that gold is a purely monetary metal, right? It's almost 100% monetary. There's very little of it component that's industrial. There's some jewelry demand, but even for most jewelry, people will not melt. There will be people who will melt jewelry, but for high quality, high-end jewelry, I've been looking at the jewelry market a little bit, and I've been looking at who uses most of the gold in the world, and it's the jewelry and watchmaking market. And if you look at a gold Rolex, nobody's melting a gold Rolex to sell the gold. They will keep the Rolex because it has more value than its gold content. So they won't melt it. They'll just sell the Rolex as is, and the Rolex will be sold as is. So that's kind of, so I don't think there's a high risk actually of jewelry or watches or these things. Only a small proportion of it will go back into gold, and it will be the low quality stuff, like the 14 karat stuff, the extremely lower end jewelry with small gold content, 9 karat gold chains, for example. And yeah, so I don't think that gold will have such a strong inflationary impact because jewelry will suddenly all be melted to become investment gold. That's not going to happen. If jewelry, right? If gold price goes up and jewelry is in the market, people will sell jewelry as gold jewelry. They're not going to revert the process because they can make more money by selling as gold jewelry as the price of gold goes up. That's what I think. And to sum it up, I think value is relative, depends on context. I stack gold and silver because, to protect myself from monetary risk. What do you do? Leave a comment down below and tell me, what do you think? Whether you prefer gold, silver, platinum, no judgment. We all have things that we like. I like having a little bit of everything. Maybe you stack water. You think we're going to be in a water shortage soon, so water will trump everything. This is a commodity. It can be stored. You can store indefinitely in a plastic bottle. That's yeah. Anyways, thank you very much for watching. Click the like button, click the subscribe button to receive freaking content, and thank you very much for watching. Yeah, and click the notification button to get notified. Thank you very much for watching. Dave out.